Well, good morning and happy Memorial Day, which is coming up. Today we're going to be talking about the collapse of public education, something of grave concern to all of us. But before we do, I'd just like to give a shout out to all of the veterans on Memorial Day. And in particular, I'm going to just take a minute to recognize all of the great guys of Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marine Regiment. We fought together in 1967 in a tremendous, brutal, bloody battle that kicked off Operations Union 1 and Union 2, which were a struggle between the 1st Marine Division and the elite 2nd North Vietnamese Division in the Quay Son Valley. And our company was the first one. We had the first Medal of Honor winner posthumously, and in all, as the battle unfolded and went on for a couple of months, there were a total of 7 Medal of Honor winners, all posthumous, and about 900 Marines died in this battle, which turned out to be the bloodiest battle for the U.S. Marine Corps in the entire 10-year war. So for those guys at Fox Company who still get together with me and with others periodically, God bless you guys. I'm also going to take just a moment to give a shout out on behalf of my old snake hunting buddy, Marty Martins, who was killed by a timber rattlesnake about 3 years ago. Marty and I always had a little competition as we'd be climbing through the Appalachian Mountains, and our guy would race along like a mountain goat going straight up the Rocky Mountains, and I was always struggling along to keep up with the guy. But he was with the 101st Airborne Division at the Battle of Hamburger Hill in 1969, a couple years after I was in battle. And the guys at the 101st waged just a phenomenal battle, struggling to retake Hamburger Hill from the North Vietnamese. So I just give those as 2 examples from the Marines and from the Army of people who sacrificed a great deal. After the battle had finished with Fox Company, I dragged several dozen dead Marines and loaded them on the helicopters as they flew in. And the helicopters were my guys from the Ugly Angels, HMM 362, great combat pilots. And I just remember the stunned expressions on the pilots' faces as they looked out on just row after row of dead Marines. And it was a very sobering experience, even for pilots who were accustomed to recovering the dead from the battlefields. They'd never seen so many dead Marines before, or probably afterwards either. But in any event, God bless you to all the veterans who've served, and this is the day that we recognize those who served and did not return. So God bless them all. With that, let me turn to an important topic today, which is the collapse of public education. Public schools in the United States have been seeing declining academic performance, increasing levels of disorder and violence, policy failures, and the flight of many people from the public school system. The good news is that there are emerging alternatives to the public schools. Let's look at just the statistics. The test scores are plummeting. The standardized national test scores in reading and math have sharply declined, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, when pressure from the teachers' unions simply ended public education for children for over a year. Obviously the unions could care less about kids. They're principally designed to represent teachers who are in trouble with their performance. But in any event, unions have taken over and the schools are in decline. National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is kind of the gold standard, they examined and they found that the average test scores between 2020 and 2022, just in a 2-year period. For 9-year-olds, they fell by 5% in reading and 7 points in math. Just a tremendous, tremendous decline in academic achievement. And this was worse for minority students than it was for others. Among Black students, math scores dropped in that 2-year period by 13%. And for Hispanics, they dropped by 8%. Now, these trends indicate a systemic academic failure. They're not a temporary blip. They're not some minor alteration, because these are long-term trends that we're seeing. Now, the families and their children are exiting the public school system en masse. They're opting for private and home education. The United States Census Bureau reported that homeschooling doubled from 5.5% in 2020 up to 11.1% by the fall of 2020. So we're talking about how a one-year span, homeschooling doubled. Now, at the same time, private school enrollment increased by over 4% in a 1-year period from 2021 to 2022. At the same time, public school enrollment overall was falling by nearly 2 million students. This happened while the pandemic was underway. You lost 2 million students, and although some of them did come back after the schools sort of got more serious about education, the trends in homeschooling have resumed, and more kids are just simply shifting out of the public schools. So families are voting with their feet. They're fleeing what is a very unresponsive and often a very unsafe system. Violence and misbehavior have become endemic to the public school system. Physical violence and classroom destruction are rather normalized. They're sort of to be expected on a daily basis. According to a 2022 U.S. Department of Education survey, 84% of public schools reported that the pandemic negatively impacted student behavior. And nearly 70% of schools noted an increase in students' aggressive behaviors, like fighting or threatening teachers or other pupils. There's a very, very interesting 2024 interview series by a teacher, Jennifer Kaiser. And in that, she recounts multiple cases of students throwing furniture in class, attacking staff, and she also spoke of administrators who refused to intervene due to the legal and policy barriers afflicting the public school system. Teachers are being driven out. They're leaving the teaching profession. They're trying to flee to home schools, private schools, that kind of thing. In some cases, teachers leave the classroom because there are such levels of tension and violence, and the students then are just left unprotected, and of course with the disruptive elements and that type of thing, they're simply unable to learn. And one of the fundamental problems in public education is the DEI initiatives, which are exacerbating this disorder. As you know, President Trump has really gone to war with DEI because it just had such a corrosive effect on all of American culture, and nowhere is this felt more intensely than in the public school system. The diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, including critical race theory, fosters division and it undermines authority. The way that DEI works is DEI is designed to foster racism within the classroom and within corporate America as well. DEI often divides students into categories of oppressed and oppressors. And of course, the lighter skinned students are condemned as being oppressors, and the darker skinned students are called oppressed. And the teachers teach these things, and then they harp endlessly on ancient things like slavery and segregation and so forth, which, you know, have historical importance, but very little bearing on modern culture. But by constantly dredging these things up, giving them a way outsized importance, they drum into the heads of young children that somehow the world around them is just paralyzed with all sorts of racism and unfairness, and that in turn promotes racism at a level really that I don't think I have ever seen in the school system, and I've been around a long time. But now there is sort of a determined effort within the public school system to foster racial hatred and animosity. There's an emphasis on something called microaggressions. And what a microaggression is that minority students are taught that, for example, if a white girl walks off to the side to avoid going through a group of boisterous minority students, that shows that she's a racist, she's an oppressor. But really what it shows is that she doesn't want to be beaten, she doesn't want to be raped, she doesn't want to be insulted. And by teaching about microaggressions, you teach minority children to walk around with a chip on their shoulder, sort of looking for something to be out of order. The fact is that life just involves little benign interactions. They're not malicious. They're just human nature. You know, not everybody likes everybody. Not everybody is polite. Sometimes people say things that may not be the optimal way of saying things. I mean, that's human nature. People are not automatons. But when you begin to present that as evidence of racism and oppression, you really foster uncontrollable levels of hatred, which is what we saw back during the George Floyd uprisings with BLM and Antifa rioting and burning the cities, assassinating police officers, chasing people through the streets, beating them because of their light skin and this sort of thing. Now, there are many reports out of Baltimore City where the school system is, for the most part, in a situation of absolute collapse. There are very somewhat conflicting reports. There's one report that says that in 2023 there were 23 Baltimore City schools with not a single student proficient in math, and that there were 10 that had not a single student proficient in reading. Now, this is for any race within the school. These are heavily minority schools in Baltimore City, but the atmosphere is so tense, so boiling, bubbling with racial hatred and animosity that it's impossible for children to learn. And the fact you cannot convince me that there is not at least one student in each of those schools who is capable of being proficient in math and in reading. I don't care what the makeup of the student body is. But what's happened is the schools in Baltimore have become so antagonistic towards intellectual achievement. It's like you're sort of being one of the oppressors if you study and if you learn. It's a very hostile environment for children. So these policies especially harm minority students in urban schools that are afflicted by this worsening chaos. We've also got the problem of transgenderism, which is a situation where you have boys that pretend to be girls or girls who pretend to be boys. And teachers now face being fired if they do not obey the students, the misbehaving students. And if the student demands to be called, if a boy demands to be called a girl, then the teacher must obey. And it undermines authority of the teachers. Clearly, it is in violent conflict with any normal concept of morality. Right now, in Loudoun County, Virginia, which is where I am, we've had a tremendous outpouring of parents at the last school board member meeting. I was one of them. And what's happened is there was a very naughty girl who felt she was entitled to use the boys' locker room. She's one of these, so-called transgender things. And so the girl went into the boys' locker room while the boys were getting ready to disrobe. And she went in there filming the boys. And the boys, they didn't realize they were being filmed. She was doing that surreptitiously. And she recorded the boys, and the boys weren't doing anything hostile to her, but they were just conversing among themselves, expressing their concern that there was a girl in the boys' locker room. Now, even though there is a specific prohibition on anyone filming, recording, using cell phone to take pictures within locker rooms and bathrooms, the Loudoun County public school system obviously, they don't care about good students. They are strictly there to enforce the will of the evil and disruptive elements within the schools. And so they just disregarded their policy that prohibits the filming. And they said, well, that's not a problem because the boys weren't undressed yet. Well, give me a break. I mean, how foolish can these people be? So you see this disruptive influence of transgenderism, the homosexual introduction of homosexual transgenders reading storybooks to little children. And all of these things are undermining education. Now, we also have the very corrosive influence of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and one of the laws that sort of is an outgrowth of it, and it's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. And IDEA is federal law, and it requires that students who have some kind of learning disability, which is very broadly interpreted and can mean almost anything. You know, the kid's just a goofball. Those people are required to be educated in the least restrictive environment. It's targeted. IDEA, the federal IDEA law, is targeted at enhancing the legal posture of violent and disruptive students in the public schools. And it says that they are entitled to be educated in the least restrictive environment. And because of this, there's enormous federal pressure on the public schools to force the school systems to accommodate these misbehaving students. And the kids can misbehave over and over. They can assault other students. They can assault teachers. And the next thing, there was one teacher in one of these schools that sort of houses these disruptive students. And this young boy just wouldn't do what he was supposed to do. He wouldn't, he was misbehaving, unresponsive, wouldn't obey. The teacher finally, took him by the ankle and dragged him out of the classroom. And the next thing, there was a lawsuit against the teacher. The teacher's in trouble. So the arrow, government's arrow, has pointed away from the misbehavior of students, the criminal misbehavior, and it has targeted the good and decent teachers that are trying to maintain order and discipline. So the public school system is clearly failing. It's failing in some areas more than in others. In many of our Democrat cities, the public education system is in a near state of collapse, just afflicted with violence, racism, homosexual influences, pornography in the libraries, books that are pornographic, unions that are snarly, leftist, socialist-oriented organizations that enhance the posture, the legal posture of very bad teachers, incompetent, misbehaving teachers. And so we have this situation where the public is faced with, what do we do? Do I send my child to a school where my child is at risk of being raped or being bullied, knocked around, assaulted, where my where my child is likely to be singled out by the teacher as an oppressor and shown to the other students, where you say, look, this one has white skin, this one is an oppressor. You have a poor little child, maybe a 6-year-old child, being called an oppressor. And what does that child do? How confusing can that be when a child has never done a thing wrong or unkind in their lives, and all of a sudden they have all of these bullies, and the teacher is siding with the bullies who are saying, go get that one, do whatever you think is appropriate. Now, they don't quite say that, but they imply it by teaching that, hey, you're oppressed. That's an oppressor. And maybe that oppressor deserves whatever she gets. So this is what's happening in the public schools. This is why there is a flood of people exiting the public schools. The federal government and the state governments simply are incapable of untangling this mess. I spent 16 years over a 20-year period where I was on the Education Committee, first in the House and then in the Senate in Virginia. Made enormous efforts to try to reform public education. I can't say that we ever accomplished very much, despite just incredible effort to do so. And then when the Democrats took control of the legislature, then there was just a total collapse of good order and discipline in the schools. And now, rather than worrying about teaching children how do you read, how do you write, they spend much of their time rooting through historical grievances. Here in Loudoun County, the school board it busies itself not with figuring out better ways to educate children. It busies itself with figuring out how can we change the names of schools, that if you really dig deeply enough, you'll find that some school was, 100 years ago was named after somebody who had some connection with somebody involved with some, with segregation or slavery or something. Nobody ever knew. Not one student in any of those schools knew for the last 50 years that there was any such connection. But you have racist organizations like the NAACP that make their money by muckraking and trying to dig up ancient grievances. And so you have this focus, particularly within any area that's governed by the Democrats, this focus on fostering ancient animosities long since forgotten, and using those in order to pit groups of students against one another. But the good news, and there is good news, is that Congress and the states are finally beginning to respond to the problems of the collapsing schools, not by just trying to tinker here and there, but you have an institution. The public schools are so institutionally corrupt that it's just not feasible to try to reform them. I believe we should continue trying, don't get me wrong, but I think the answer to this is going to be school choice, where there is not a parent, I don't care, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, not a parent who does not want their child to have the best possible education. And that includes very uneducated people. Every parent wants the best education for their child. And the problem is that there's been a monopoly, and monopolies have a tendency to become very unresponsive. But what we have now is policymakers are beginning to facilitate school choice, and this is creating a structural escape from the failing public school system. President Trump has been pushing for this big, beautiful bill, what he's talking about there is the budget bill with a great number of provisions contained in this budget bill. And the bill will be passed through a process called reconciliation, where there's a single bill within the 2-year session of Congress that can be introduced and passed by a simple majority. So it can get through the Senate without requiring 60 votes to finally bring it to a vote. So the situation we have now is that the House managed to pass this great budget bill. They did it with a very slim majority because there were a couple of the Republicans who did not help, because it leaves the budget deficit very large, at least for the time being. But there were many things that just had to be done, and the only way you could pull together a consensus was to, not to address the budget deficit as strenuously this time as we will in the future. But in any event, it got through the House, and it now goes to the Senate, where we'll see what the Senate does. I think there's ample support in the Senate to pass the bill, but the problem is that they're going to want to make changes in it, and then it has to go back to the House. The margin is so narrow in the House that any significant change in the Senate is likely to cause some real struggles getting the bill passed. But in any event, when the House passed the big, beautiful bill, it included $5 billion in school choice funds. And this, of course, will be distributed among all of the states. In the Senate, Senator Cruz is pushing very hard to increase that number to $10 billion. What this will do is it will provide money to parents in 50 states that will allow them to receive tuition tax credits for sending their children to home schools and private schools. And so that is moving along, and it looks like there's a good deal of support for it. Now, as of 2025, the states have been enacting legislation that allows tuition tax credits or vouchers in the state to offset the cost of private and homeschool education. As of 2025, there are 15 Republican-led states that either have universal education savings accounts or vouchers, and it's likely that number will continue to increase. And you never know, at some point there may even be Democrat-run states where they just have to face the fact that the educational collapse is so severe, and it's worse. It's worse typically in the Democrat areas, and they may just have to say, okay, let's try school choice, because the violence in our Democrat-run schools is so great that parents are demanding a choice. In Arizona, they have something called the Empowerment Scholarship Account, and it now covers 100% of their K through 12 students. So you can see some states are just jumping in and saying, okay, we're gonna totally empower the parents to decide what the education for their children will be like. So we see a political environment, particularly since President Trump has taken office, where the legislative tide has turned decisively toward alternatives to public education. Now, the private and home schools are offering a very fine escape route for children. Let me just mention with homeschooling, for many years, homeschooling meant that an individual family would educate their child in the home. The more modern trend is for homeschooling to involve cooperatives. And what you have, the cooperative is the children do study at home under the supervision of their parents, but then 2-3 times a week, they attend the co-op, which looks very much like a regular school, and they attend courses. And this is just in recognition of the fact that not every homeschool parent is competent in every subject. And so you'll have perhaps a mother who is very good at English, but maybe not so good at mathematics. You may have somebody else who's good at science, but not wanting to teach English. And so the parents come together. Often the parents are teachers at the co-ops, and then occasionally they'll have perhaps some people who are paid teachers there. But the schools are able to go there. Those schools, the homeschool co-ops, are not required to take disruptive students. The federal IDEA or the ADA, all of these do-good programs don't impact the homeschoolers. Homeschoolers are allowed to openly express Christianity, and they have no problem deciding who they want to take and who they don't want to take. Now, I can tell you, having taught homeschooling in my own home during the COVID, and from visiting various co-ops, they tend to be a rather diverse group. Occasionally, you will have disabled students who have perhaps Down syndrome or something else. And as long as they're not disruptive, as long as they're obedient and cooperative, they fit in very well. And when I taught in my office, we had considerable racial variety within the class. We had at least one student who was who had some amount of Down syndrome, and everyone cooperates. Everyone is kind. Everyone is thoughtful. Everyone is polite. Everyone is obedient. Doesn't mean they don't get restless from time to time. And this was when I taught. It was during COVID, and we didn't we didn't have shots, we didn't have masks, and while other children were sheltered in their basements, hiding away from the world, covered with masks and so forth, our kids were free and open. And when they got restless, we'd open the doors and they'd run out in the yard, and they'd wrestle and chase one another and laugh, and they were joyous and happy at a time when other children were somber and lonely. So these schools work very well. In any event, in conclusion, let me just say that the trend towards homeschooling and private schooling, particularly private Christian schooling, the trends are very powerful, and they suggest that this is not something that is just induced by the COVID anomaly. It is continuing and accelerating. The legal barriers and the union resistance have made the public school system virtually impossible to reform. And because of that, public education may not collapse overnight, but its replacement is already underway. And I think we can all simply pray that that out of the ashes of the public education system, the once fine public education system, out of those ashes will arise a new system of education in the United States that provides choice to parents and to students, so that they can now be schooled in a safe, secure, moral, joyful, polite, courteous environment, and they can step away from the darkness and violence and despair that is so endemic in our public school system. We can all only hope and pray that this happens. We know that the Trump administration is quite zealous about bringing about major change, and we will see how that goes. But in any event, that's it for today. I wish you a very, very good Memorial Day weekend. Don't forget those who have died, like my radio man, Corporal Henry Smith, who died along with Lance Corporal Dennis Wargo, died right beside me as we fought our way across the Hoi An River to rescue Marines who had been surrounded by communist forces on the far side of the river. So God bless you all. Have a good weekend. This has been Senator Black, Focus on the News.